moment. And then this point I made before about the potential for risk that if we centralize production, if we centralize our distribution centers even, then clearly the potential, if something does go wrong, that can cause a significant havoc right across our supply chain. In fact, if you think about it, we talk a lot about business continuity. Most of us work in organizations where we have well-established business continuity plans. Now, most of those business continuity plans tend to be based mainly around things like IT. You know, for instance, if our systems collapse or fall over, how easy is it to recover? What sort of backups do we have in place? And so on. And that's fine. And I reckon we've probably got, you know, our own internal risk pretty well not under control, but we certainly got it under observation, right? We're trying very hard to make sure we know exactly, you know, what's going on within our factories, you know, within our IT systems, whatever. But I actually think the biggest risk to business continuity lies outside the four walls of our business. It lies in that wider supply chain. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples in a moment. And partly this is due to the complexity and interconnectedness of modern supply chains. As I say, going back to the days of Henry Ford I, he wouldn't worry, I guess, too much about this because he owned his own supply chain. You know, he owned steel mills, he owned rubber plantations, glass factories. It was all there, basically, right? I doubt he outsourced a single thing. That's totally changed, as we know, and for very good reasons, too. But it's clearly significantly changed the risk profile of today's modern businesses. Now, we often think that risk is coming from, you know, external sources, you know, be it sort of earthquakes, lightning strikes, you know, whatever. Actually, much of the risk we build in. It's systemic. It's built into the network, and it's there because of decisions that we have taken. And it's interesting that the theme of this workshop is about global network design and redesign, because this is fundamental, basically. We make these decisions. We make these decisions about who we partner with, where we source, our manufacturing strategy, right? These are decisions that we have taken. And if we want to just extend this idea a little bit further, this idea of complexity that makes us recognize, we talk about supply chains, it's a convenient phrase, but of course when we graph our chain, it doesn't look anything like a chain, it's a network. And it's an increasingly complex one with many different tiers, many different nodes and links. The nodes are the different entities, typically organizations. The links, sometimes they're infrastructure links, sometimes they're information systems links, sometimes they're financial flows, right? And the risk to a supply chain comes from either a disturbance at one of the nodes or a disruption to one of the links. And I think increasingly we're going to have to be much more aware of just what the shape of that extended network actually looks like, and start to do a lot of analyses here and even simulations to say, what if one of those links were to be broken? How easy would it be for the rest of the network to reconfigure? What if one of those entities, for whatever reason, would it be removed? How easy would it be for us to reshape the remaining chain? And if we start to actually look at a couple of examples here, I think it makes this point particularly clear. This is an example from the automotive industry. And let me just read it to you. Automotive companies that produce diesel engines rely heavily on a ceramic particulate filter that is supplied by only two companies in the world. Both happen to be in Japan, Ibiden and NGK Insulators, both headquartered in Japan. When Ibiden experienced quality problems in early 2005, Ford and PSA Peugeot Citroën were unable to produce thousands of vehicles. That's just one example. There's many like that. We can almost pick them out of the press most months in most industries. And that's, if you like, not even a first-tier supplier. We're talking here about a supplier several stages removed from the focal business, in this case, Ford and PSA, Peugeot, Citroën. And sometimes, I think often, managers in those companies are not even aware. They know their first-tier suppliers. I hope they know their first-tier suppliers, but they may not be aware of the second or even the third tier. And that's where much of this vulnerability can come from, clearly. As shown in this next example. This comes from a very interesting book, by the way. If you want to read more about these sorts of issues and these sorts of challenges that we're all going to face, this is a good book to look at. It's called End of the Line by an author called Barry Lynn. Very well researched, very well documented book. Following the shutdown of Dell's American assembly line within days of the September 1999 earthquake in Taiwan, the company set out to understand why this had happened, because I think many managers at Dell said, hey, hang on a minute, we don't buy a lot of product from Taiwan. You know, how come this has had such a major impact on the wider business? To do this, Dell studied where their Tier 1 suppliers did their shopping. So where did their Dell's immediate suppliers get their materials, their components from? And this, in turn, soon yielded the first important answer. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, one of the biggest manufacturers, if not the biggest, semiconductors in the world. Dell's executives realized that they were, in fact, buying hundreds of millions of dollars of chips each year from TSMC indirectly. They were probably TSMC's biggest customer, actually. Not directly, but indirectly. Because there was hardly a component or a subassembly that Dell was buying that didn't include one of their particular products.